Pico, the master baiter, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube.
When you first came to the game, here's a question I have that no one asks. What people forget about this game is, it's not like in CS where we decide if someone's an entry or a support, and sometimes we even do mislabel people, I will say, if we're like just watching with a broad view. Obviously, this role is more MOBA-esque. It has literal, based on what agent you play and what it sets up, right? So if people don't know, in this game, you play the Initiator role, but this might confuse people, because that might sound like it's entry in Counter-Strike, right? Can you tell me what the difference is? How do you explain the role Initiate to people in a Valorant game if they're from CS?
Yeah, so I think like the technical term or like the description is like you initiate your teammate to fight or like something like that. So like you initiate the fight, but not like in a 1v1. Like you basically set up your teammates to fight, which is like the perfect description of it. And like that's kind of how I played like my whole career, both in CS and this game.
Right.
So I think they hit the, I think they got it right. I think that's how the game is playing right now. I think it's, that's kind of how the role is just designed to work.
Because this will skip me forwards a bit, because in Valorant, I'm not as familiar with the game, so I want to ask more like big picture question. A question I have about Valorant in this role is, I heard from Gio, who I do a podcast with, and she knows a lot more about Valorant than I do. She actually said that you were actually playing this role quite uniquely. I think like being an in-game leader maybe from this role was unique. I can't remember what her angle was. It's something about like, she actually said also, the other thing is not everyone plays all the roles the same way. It's the same way as, for example, if people know that they're playing Nats, he definitely doesn't play his role, where everyone else plays their fucking the same role, right? So give me some thoughts. Did you do something a bit differently as Initiator?
I was mainly like, I think most initiators, like they take the back seat and kind of get told what to do maybe most of the time. I think it's different with me, like having like mid-rounded my whole career. That was like the main thing I wanted to do no matter what team I was on. I wanted to like be that guy that did the opposite. I wanted to like be the commanding. Other than the IGL, like the primary IGO, I'd be like his right-hand man. And do bounce off him, whoever that was. So that I think it's worked really well. I've gone along with all the IGOs I've worked under, and now I've kind of like taken the reins. So we'll see how that goes.
I mean, that's one thing I probably should ask you about in relation also to Counter-Strike, right? Is people are going to talk about names like FNS or Daps or Stanislaw, but what they don't know is actually what you're talking about. It's actually quite common that someone on the entry pack might be a secondary caller. Like, they're going to see different things if the caller's back in the middle of the map or something. So this is something you've always done in your teams. I mean, it's not really publicized, but it's a role you were always playing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was... I think it's more prominent now in Valorant for some reason, but in CS... Yeah, maybe it was the same in CS, but in CS I was kind of always on the extremities because I would lurk a lot, but I would also be that mid-rounder. So that's different in this game. I think a lot of the mid-rounders are with the pack in the middle, but back then they put their IGLs in the middle in CS. So that's the little difference. Maybe it's different now. I don't watch CS that much anymore, other than like the majors, I guess. But yeah, I think that's kind of just how I've been my whole career.
Right, when you did come over, you literally joined Nitro's team, you joined the 100 Thieves team. But this team, if people don't remember, here's what's weird. I have to explain this because it'll sound weird otherwise, which is, like I said earlier about how what the current NA talent basically plays Valorant, people think it's just the old washed players that play it. No, what happened is at the beginning, the washed players came, then in the middle, some legit people like you came, and then all the younger players came through since, right? So it's actually an interesting blend. But when you came, at this time period you came over, was actually sort of the middle part of that. It was like all the old ones, like a load of your old CLG teammates were all still around and stuff. And it's like, when you joined this team, though, I feel like your team's an example, 100 Thieves, of the transition from old CS players to new Valorant players. Because when you joined, it was like the boomers. It was like Hiko and Steel. And I mean, even Nitro's pretty old at that point in time, right? When you joined the team initially, what was the squad like? You basically joined a Counter-Strike team.
That's literally, that's pretty much what it felt like. Because it was, I think that was what their aim was for. We had... Oh,
right. They did it intentionally, right.
I think so, because Asuna, he played CS, but he was more of like a ranked player.
Right.
He like even admitted that to me. He was like, yeah, like I played a little bit, but everyone else on the team has been playing, CS for like years, maybe even like a decade. So yeah, I count myself pretty lucky. I played with, like in my whole career, I played with the top NA IGLs my whole career. So I think I attribute that to like a lot of my like molding, a lot of my development. I played with the best people my whole entire career.
Right, I know there was a weird scenario in this team where when I mentioned those two names, Nitro and Steel, they obviously famously have both been IGLs, and I believe in this team they both at different times with the IGL right. So can you give me from your perspective, what was the situation there? Like, I mean, first of all, like, it's kind of weird to have both in the same team, but fair enough. I guess Nitro can not IGL if he wants to. Like, give me some thoughts. What was it like to play with these two players?
It was kind of weird because I came in. I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into with like two IGLs like that, like prominent NA IGLs. But it was kind of weird because like I think Steel, I might be wrong. I think Steel was IGLing when I came in, and like Nitro was doing my job that I've always done. It's like the second like right hand man. So I was like, well, shit, what do I do? I was like the third hand man. I was like, I didn't know. I kind of didn't really know where to like put myself.
Right.
And then we were bouncing back and forth with like placements, like tournament placings, and then I think Nick might have taken over IGLing at one point.
Okay.
I think at one point it was just too many cooks in the kitchen. I think with that many, people thinking like that, CS players with that much experience, it's like you can't have too much for teams.
I have a strange question for you about Steel, which goes like this. When I interviewed him, it's actually someone I've talked to quite a lot. He told me that in Valorant, he actually thinks this might have even been a mistake because he had such a set reputation from CSGO that everyone will know, sort of like he's a bit of a hard ass and he obviously complains a lot and he sort of gets on his teammates if they don't do it. He's kind of, basically, it's like the strict general IGL type archetype, right? He told me in Valorant, he actually thinks he fucked up because he said he tried in this team to almost do the opposite and like sometimes not be controlling or like try and be more chill or so, because he was trying to like turn this reputation. Does this match up with your experience of when you played with him?
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously he did well in CS. He was known for being a good IGL. I think in Valorant, maybe it was just like a new scene. Obviously, he has like a new player with Asuna. He never played with me before. Never played. Did he ever play with Nick? Maybe like way back then.
I don't think so. Oh, maybe he played on like an iBuyPower tournament or something. Yeah, sure.
But like it's just a bunch of
just
a bunch of people he's never played with. Maybe he wanted to try a new style. Maybe the coach said like maybe let's try something loose. It's a new game. I'm not sure, but I think he did really good. I think at the start we had some success. Not any wins, but I think we placed pretty good at I think it was like a Masters. We came like third or fourth. So. But yeah, I'm not sure. I never played under him either, so I don't know how he was before that, if that makes sense.
When you had this run, like you say, at one of the Masters tournaments in that first year in 2021, and you made it like pretty deep, and you were playing like the absolute best teams, you were playing Sentinels and fucking Gambit, who were the gods at the time. Like, how would you compare at that time? Because they were trying to make these lands like the equivalent to whatever the biggest in CS was. It was going to be a whole circuit, obviously. How would you compare a tournament like that to? I mean, if the major's the equivalent of champs, what is one of these events like? Like, was that type of was the event as big as like if you go to like Cologne or fucking I don't know, like Sydney or so? Was it comparable to the CS events?
Well, the thing with back then, there was no crowds at
yes, right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So no matter how cool the stage was, there's like no comparison.
Right. And does that affect like what the feel of the competition's like if there's no crowd?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if they pumped in some like crowd noise. I don't think they did. I think it was literally just like quiet. Like during these rounds, you would have you would have like the in-ears and you would have like the big headsets on. And so like the only thing you would hear, I think they would like play a sound after the round is like finished, and that was it. It was just like it's something I never experienced before, other than like online CS, I guess. But it was definitely not comparable with like any lands I've been to in Counter-Strike.
What was it like to play those Gambit players, the Russian ones that I'm talking about, which even though now like they're still in the scene, some of them are on like Liquid and stuff, but like everyone I talked to back then, dude, used to rave about these guys. They used to say they were like, they made them sound like the Valorant equivalent of what Astralis did to Counter-Strike. They revolutionized the game and stuff. Is it true?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be like that number one team, and they were like those guys. They were the guys that were like probably predicted to like win the tournaments. So if you got matched against them, or like you knew you were on their side of the bracket, you were like, ah, shit, we got to face Gambit. Yeah, they were just like they were probably like the best team back then, I'd say.
Must have been a wild buzz to beat them on land then.
Yeah, we were. I think that was like, I don't know. I didn't even think we were that good, but we played like really well that game. I think both the games we came back from like we were down like 10 points each. In both games we came back. So it's like, or no, there was one game on Gambit where we came back from like a 10-point deficit, and then like the next game after that, or the one before, against Ascend, we were down 10 points again, and we came back.
Right.
And they were both on LAN, like in playoffs. So we were doing God's work on in those playoff matches.
One thing that might surprise like someone from Counter-Strike, if they're still listening to this part of the interview, is that actually, like I alluded to before, I actually know from watching a bit of Valorant myself that Nitro could play as a non-IGL. Like, people forget he used to not be an IGL in Counter-Strike and had talent because, dude, if people don't know, his role he played, the controller role, he was actually pretty fucking... It's like his skill set just fit this role. It's like all utility and shit, right? Like, give me some thoughts on Nitro and Valorant. Like, from what I saw, he actually looked like he was like reviving his career. He looked pretty good, right?
Yeah, when I first joined, he was like, I think he was said to be like the best Omen in the game.
Right.
So like that was his like main controller. That's what every controller played was Omen back then. So he's like the best one. And then when I joined, they put me on Omen and him on something else. So I was like a little confused.
He was maybe on like Astra or some shit like that. What was it? What would he have been on back then? Sky or something? What was it back then?
I think so. Yeah, I think Sky or like one of those initiators. And then I ended up being like a really good Omen. And so we were just like, damn, maybe CS players are just like really good at this role or something. But no, he's always been really good. I think even now he's playing for M80. I think he'll do really well in challengers. But yeah, when you're that good for that long, it's got to be a genetic thing. You know, you're not going to ever be bad.
Sure.
So.
I mean, the other thing I'd ask is this. So as I set up, even though I actually understand why you laugh and say like you didn't even think you were good at this tournament, because basically that tournament was like the one run. This squad, aside from that, is like a nightmare, like rotation of players coming in and out, like on the last spot. You're swapping IGLs, like are these old CS players going to stay? Are we getting this new guy? Obviously then the newer players coming in, because then it was like the DDK Sean Gares era came in, and they were clearly trying to like scout young talent and stuff. Like it feels like you just got caught in a transition period in this team, because after that, the team was a mess, mate. Like, there's a reason why you left eventually, right?
Yeah, it was definitely like a development team. I think they were trying to transition to. They were trying to make it I think they were just trying to get lucky with like scout or talents. They were trying to scout, and that's like not really what I was looking for. I mean, I literally went from a team with like 4 veterans and like a really good rookie with Asuna to like part of a development team. So it felt kind of like a complete 180. Even if it could have worked out, even if we could have made it work, it was like not what I expected or like was looking for at that time in my career. Maybe at the start of my career, maybe that would have been like the perfect thing. But
I mean, this time you're ready to win, right? This is like you spent that many years, you want a top team, right? You want to just go to the ladder and have a chance to win it, right?
Yeah, especially like coming to a different game and then like instantly having that like good placing in Berlin. It's like everything's looking up at that point for me. So it's like my expectation isn't to go back down and go back up again. It's kind of to keep that linear progression and keep on going up.
Even if, look, resume-wise, Nitro's almost certainly the best player that went over to Valorant because he had an insane resume even from like a year or two before.
Yeah.
But I would actually say, I always used to tell people on my Valorant show, you were actually the player in terms of like raw ability in CSGO, though, who swapped over like basically closest to their peak. Like, you were actually just like, as we say, you could easily have stayed. You just chose to leave. Like, it wasn't like you were out of the scene and you couldn't get a team.
Yeah.
When you came to Valorant, I actually heard from loads of the people in Valorant, you were also really good in Valorant. They all said you actually fit the game pretty quickly. You were actually considered like one of the top players from NA. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it's easy to believe and like everyone says it. So everyone kept saying. They also had like at that point, most of the people that switched over that were like semi-pro or pro Valorant were all CS players.
Yes.
Whether they were pro, semi-pro, whatever, they were all CS players. So like they looked up to me. They looked up to me, and then I switched to their game. So it's like I noticed that a lot. Like people had a lot of good things to say about me, whoever was in Valorant. So it was pretty cool. I think, like you said too, I didn't like leave CS because it was like because I was washed or like I was like we were getting bad results, but everyone on the team was like still really good. It was literally just like that environment that I talked about before. It was like if it wasn't like that, I think I'd probably still be in CS. So
one of the reasons I'm actually not as surprised that some of the people who came from CS themselves then basically made CS squads. Like the funny thing is, obviously the people you play with now, the FNS squad of NRG and stuff, they themselves basically, like, it looked like every lineup he made was just supposed to be a CSGO squad. And actually, I think as much as it's cynical, early on that seems like it made sense, because even though later we can talk about how the game's very different, one of the things that is the same is you have to have concepts like trading and simple utility usage and keeping track of these things, like conditioning the opponent on T side, you know, like these are things that, like, the problem is you take it for granted if you come from Counter-Strike, because that's our world. That's all we thought about. Well, I know some of these people come from, like, if people don't know, there's actually pros in Valorant for like Fortnite and stuff. Like, they're coming from a totally different world. Like, in the early days, there was a benefit to being a CS player, right?
100%. I mean, that's like just a whole other trait you don't have to teach when playing with like, even like decent, like half decent CS players. It's like those like small fundamental things you just don't have to teach. So it's like that's just a whole step you skip. And you know, like some like you said, like these people that play different games where these concepts just aren't a thing or it's foreign to them. It's like they just it blew my mind. Like when if on some teams that I played on, you know, people didn't play CS. They didn't come from CS. And like when we talked about these like fundamental things like trading, or like when you kill one of their guys and you're up numbers, you're like in an advantage.
Play safe. Yeah, exactly. Sure.
It's like that's like foreign to some people,
right?
Which blew my mind. And so that was like, you kind of had to take a step back and like look at the big picture and, you know, go into teaching mode a little bit for some people. But you know, it's cool. I think that's why Valorant's really cool. You bring a lot of people from like all different kind of games. And CS, it was like once CS was everyone's first game when you played CS. So yeah.
What about on the other side of the equation, though? Because I don't want people who come from CS and don't know much Valorant to actually think like at the beginning of the game when they first saw screenplay and all he did is like never use abilities and just shoot people with a gun. Like, it isn't really like CS that much, guys. I always tell people it almost reminds me more of like Overwatch, because it has the MOBA elements where you have to understand the comp and what he has and when he's going to have his ult and stuff. Like these are alien concepts to Counter-Strike. Like it took me a long time of watching it to even know what I'm watching. Basically, like how much of like a learning curve do you think there is?
It was a lot. Like when I first joined, you know, like the base game, everyone's gonna say it's like Counter-Strike. It's the same premise. You plant the bomb, you know, it blows up 5v5, all that. But yeah, like you said, there's that whole extra layer that people have to learn. And back then, it was like you could tell if you were like a really fast learner or if that was just like a really good trait you had, you like excelled instantly. And the people that, you know, kind of took a little bit to adapt, didn't really know like, oh, that, like you said, that comp is like really good against that, or that agent completely just nullifies that agent. You know, that all takes time. And I think that people, even now, like if you learn really fast because of all the updates and stuff, if you have like fast learners on your team, usually those are the teams that excel the best. So it's like a whole different layer, I think, compared to CS.
By the way, when you actually, was it actually like at the beginning of EG you took, when did you take over as the in-game leader?
This was just when I joined NRG.
Oh, so just now, right? Okay, I was a bit
like
confused
literally
on
like
that
a
part.
week ago.
Right, when you came to the EG team, though, the interesting thing is, even though you had the other NRG in between, where you had like Sorb and a few of those people, that was obviously just like a brief period. Like we can forget the rest of that period. What I want to ask is this: when you initially came to the EG team, this wasn't a lineup on paper, even though people will know at the end of the year it was very successful. Dude, nobody had expectations this team was going to be top. In fact, everyone was obviously laughing at it because when this team got the VCT spot, a lot of people thought like, oh, this is cynical as fuck. It looks like you've just min-maxed all the roster. Like, basically, aside from you, these are all just players. And remember, the Demon1 guy wasn't even there. No one knew this guy. These were all just players who were in Valorant, but they were like if you use CS terminology, they were like tier 2 players or tier 1.5 or something. No disrespect to them. They just hadn't done anything yet. Even Potter was like, she'd just been around with some of the all right squads they'd had. They hadn't really had results. Like, when you joined this team initially, what were your expectations?
Yeah, I knew. I mean, I barely even made it on the team either. So it's like I was the last. I was like the last player in franchising. So that was like that blew my mind. I think that was like a big strike to the ego a little bit, honestly. But no, coming to that team, it was like you knew it was going to be a lot of development, a lot of like learning, and teaching too. So that's exactly how it was. It was a lot of like, I feel like I was like back in like the beginning, like year 1 or year 2 of CS. I was like, damn, like back here again. But luckily, you know, like I said, if you're a really fast learner, you excel. And luckily, my whole team was like everyone improved like crazy throughout the whole year. So it ended up working really well. It helps too. Everyone gets along. Everyone is
Right.
like really close knit. There's a good chemistry there, and I think that's why we did so well.
What is Potter like as a coach? Because if people know her from Counter Strike and they've seen her as an analyst on the desk, she was super chill on the desk compared to what she's like off camera. Like if people don't know, she's really competitive. I feel like she's mad spicy, right?
Yeah, she's a good coach. I mean, yeah, I think you said it. Yeah, she's very competitive. Um, there was no slacking around. I think she knew too, like the caliber of players we had at the start. There needed to be a lot of work done. Um, and it's good too because I think when I joined, she'd already been coaching like 3 of those players or
Right.
2, so she already knew. She already knew. It wasn't a complete new roster. I think that there was that still three-person core that she'd been coaching. But no, I think I tell this to a lot of people. She was like, I think, contributed a lot to like the development of all those players. I mean, because like you said, when you looked at the very start, those aren't like world class players. And just in what was it, like 6-7 months, he won like a world championship with those players, and everyone played really well. So I think there's definitely something behind it.
When the team initially was formed, and as I said, Demon1 wasn't there because obviously he came along late in the story. He was kind of like part of the cool narrative of it all. What was the team before him like? Because this is part of the reason why I think people were just blinded by the names. They looked at the names, they looked at the place, and they thought, I'll just forget about even looking at this team because it's all newer players. Like, what was the first EG like? Do you remember?
There was a lot of like trying to like figure out the roles because we picked up BCJ because he used to be on XSET, and XSET was like a top 3 team.
Yeah.
But he was an initiator, and so we picked him up and instantly put him on controller, and so he never played that before. So it was kind of like on top of all the other learning and like teaching going on. That was like we also had to like learn with him how to like make him impactful with that role. Tried me on like a couple different roles, and then like jawgemo on like some different stuff. So it was a bunch of just back and forth, and then disagreements on just like overall how to play the game, which it's like it was just a bunch. I think that was like the chemistry just didn't really line up there. And luckily, Max Demon1 fit right in, so that kind of helped the roles a bit.
Can you give me some take on this? Because the problem is that sounds like some fucking movie narrative, bro, where like the story I've heard goes like this. So this guy supposedly came from fucking like Unreal Tournament 4 or something mental, like not even like a vaguely Counter-Strike game. He comes in like just some wizard mechanical player. Supposedly one of the ways he even got scouted for real was they did like aim labs tests, and he was like, they're making it sound like the combine, and he's like acing the tests or whatever. They put him in, and obviously people know that he's pretty inexperienced, he's pretty raw, but pretty much from the beginning it was having an impact, right? He was like showing skills off and everyone was hyping him. Like, what was the take from your side? Do you remember hearing about we're going to get this player, or did you hear this shit? Like if it's weird to be with someone who hasn't played Counter-Strike, what's it like to play with someone who came from Unreal Tournament? Like, did he have any background in the game?
He played like some pugs in CS, I think was like the most he played, but like no, nothing. Like he was like an Unreal Tournament player, which I didn't even know was a thing. And so when he joined, or when he was like said, because at the start it wasn't like a complete replacement. He like filled for some maps and a couple scrims, and I was like, never in my career have I used like a 6th man, and I was like, man, this is gonna suck. So this was like the first time for me in my career I've used like 6 players on a team, and then we tried to like make it work for some maps, and he ended up being just like a better in the role, I guess, on like all the maps. So we ended up completely switching him in to the 5-man roster. And I guess it was just a lot. I mean, it's no hidden fact. He's just like insane mechanically. So it's like, as long as he has just like dumb confidence, it worked out really well. Plus him just like learning, the Valorant fundamentals, all that, and he was just gifted. Helped a lot.
Is it the case that when he joined the team, was the team already like getting together and starting to peak, and then he joined and like it went to the top? Was the team in like a weird position and then he joined and it turned around? What was the situation in that sense?
No, we were hot ass. We were hot ass before he joined. I think we were like 1-3, 1-4 maybe. I don't know how many matches we played before he joined, but we were not doing well at all. So him joining was like the desperate move. If it didn't work out, like the season was over basically. So that was like it was just thankfully it worked out, I guess.
What about, I'll ask about some of the players on the team and give me some thoughts. Obviously, we've done Demon1 there. What about Boostio? Who is this guy? Like, I'll say this. He's clearly not like you, a bit shy. Because I remember that comment he made when you guys first second. He made that comment like, China will always be X years behind. I was like, holy shit, all right, this guy likes to talk shit. Who's this guy? He seems pretty confident.
He's definitely confident. I think that was his like most, his biggest trait, I think, was just confidence. So it's good to have from an IGL. I think it's cool. But he came from Overwatch. I don't know what the fundamentals and stuff like that are like in Overwatch, but it seemed like he, did pretty well. He slotted in to Valorant very easily. And yeah, he's just a very confident guy. He's cool. He was cool. He also was like very, very easy to talk to. He wasn't like that strict IGL that kind of, didn't listen to any of his players, I guess. So it was good. It worked out.
Because I feel like since the team rose so fast and was relative nobodies before, people don't know these players do. Like, who are the other two? Who are jawgemo and Cobb? Who are these guys?
Yeah, Jaw was part of the original roster with EG under Potter. He's cool. He's quiet, but he's also like just extremely aggressive. So everyone's like personality just fit perfectly with the role they were supposed to be in. The IGL was confident, loud, I guess, and funny. Jaw was very confident again and very aggressive for his role. But he also like took criticism really well, so he's very coachable and teachable. Calm, same thing. He was like that support that just had a lot of trust in his teammates and was, willing to do a lot for the team and just, whatever the players needed, whatever the coach needed, he slotted into. So everyone was like it's weird, like their personalities just matched perfect with the roles they played. And I think that is kind of the reason it worked out so well.
When you went to the VCT Tokyo, which is obviously the big breakout, and the team came second and did that great upper bracket run, right? As you say, when the team added Demon1, there was no expectations this is a top team. When you got to the LAN, was there like a reason from boot camp or initial? Was there a reason to be confident this kind of result was possible? Was it even in the mind?
I think it started before that because we barely even made playoffs for that tournament or to qualify for the
VCT Americas thing. Yeah, sure.
Right, and then so after we barely even made it into playoffs, we played really well against those teams. So we beat NRG, beat C9, and then boom, we were like into Tokyo. So off of those two wins with like really good teams, I think C9 was like 13-1 in the regular season. We just 2-0'd them.
This is actually why people were like shitting on your team, because the joke was they didn't believe these results, right? They thought it was like a fluke or something, like a fluke run, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we beat that like super team with C9. We beat the super team with NRG. And then boom, we were qualified. So then after that, we lost energy and lost to Loud or something. But we qualified for Tokyo, so job done. And then when we went to Tokyo, I think we just had like the confidence of being at the first LAN with the team, and I think that kind of just carried us through. And we beat, with every team we beat, the confidence just like doubled.
How good actually was that FNATIC team? Obviously, at the time, the whole thing was like, who's the best? Is it Loud? Is it FNATIC? Like people like that was the discussion, right? Where they actually cracked out the FNATIC squad.
Yeah, they just like. So like at that point, they're the Astralis, right? They're the Astralis of Valorant.
I do remember watching, like, I think at this event, I looked at the stats and they have like an equivalent stat if people don't know for like HLTV rating. And theirs were like, everyone was at the fucking top except Boostio or something. Like, it was crazy for their team. I think they had like 3 players in the top 10 or something, mate. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think from every event, they've had 3 or 4 of like the top 10 rated players. Whether they win the tournament or not, they're like 4 of the players are the best. So when you have a team like that, you're going to be one of the best teams there. And especially like, I think Boaster is like, it surprised me because I didn't really know who he was in CS.
Yeah, sure.
He came from CS.
Yep.
And so watching him get better with that team, he's a very good IGL and he's like very good with the players he has. So I was pretty impressed. I think, we got shit on by them in Tokyo in the finals. And I think, they were really good.
It seems like actually in the EG squad, you did well at both the lands, mate. Like individually, your stats are pretty good. Did you feel as though you did your job? Yeah. Did you do a good job?
Yeah, I think towards the end, I really like found my place in the team. I think that helped a lot.
What, by the way, when you are in a team like that, the weird thing is, even though like we started the interview, you started your career when you were the little 16, you were like the veteran in this team, basically. Is it strange to be a veteran when you're not actually that old yourself?
Yeah, I think that's ever since like the first 100 Thieves roster I joined, that's how it felt. I think that's just kind of how it is now. You know, you're in a new game. There's really no other pro with like more experience than me in the whole scene. So I think that's just how it is gonna be now. As long as I play Valorant, that's kind of the role I'll take on.
Like, if anyone did still harbour, like, the delusion that, like, this was a fluke run in Tokyo and, you know, they just got lucky, or maybe people didn't expect them or some jazz. What was the perspective from you guys when they lost the final? Like, did you actually think, was even the notion, if you get to the final, in theory, you can win, like I said, that CS question earlier, was it like, dude, we could win Champions League, the next event coming, we should think we can win it?
Yeah. I mean, after coming second, we were, like, extremely happy with second place. Because there's like, when you go against the best team, or I guess any team, yeah, the best team in the world, let's say you play Astralis, FNATIC, all those teams, and you get shit on 3-0, like completely just stomped. Like, honestly, those aren't as bad as if you get like close, if you know what I mean. If you go like 2-3 against them, because at least those are like, you can't even be mad at that. Like, that team is just that good. So, you know, we came second, we weren't even that mad. And so because of that, we were just like super confident for champs. Because we beat a lot of good teams at Tokyo. We beat Loud, we beat, you know, Liquid, all those other teams, DRX to get there, and they were all like very clean wins too, like 2-0s. So those were very motivating. And yeah, I think after Tokyo we like solidified ourselves. I think we were like a really good team.
Did the team actually bring it? Was it just like player performance that made this happen? Did you have anything like innovative you brought to the game, do you think, as a team?
I mean, I think everyone will agree, just like the map fracture really helped us win like that many games. I mean, we were like 8-0 or something, like 8-1 on it. And like most of those were in Tokyo. But then we went to champs, we didn't play fracture one time. So there's the argument there. Like, maybe we could have done what we did in Tokyo even without fracture. So
was there something special you did on this map that made you guys comfortable on it, or something about you liked?
So we were the only team to use Sova up until like the end when people started copying us because we were that good on it. But other than that, we were just like really, I think we were just the only team that knew how to play the map. Because like we always talked about it when we scrimmed these teams, whether they were European, you know, the Asian teams, NA teams, we played them and we instantly could tell like these people just don't know how to play the map. Because it was a very niche map, and it didn't play like any other, you know, map in CS and Valorant. And so as soon as we mastered how to play it, we could just instantly tell off of like the first like 5 rounds. It was like, yeah, these guys have no clue.
By the way, one of the things that people often point out is very different from CS is also obviously the maps. I mean, the joke is one of them, and this is not a joke, actually does have 3 bomb sites. That is real, right? But it's only one map, to be fair. It's not the whole game. Like, don't make it too ridiculous, CS fans. But my question would be this. Which of the maps, because I've noticed another thing is they tend to also be quite small compared to some of the CS maps, and they're definitely weird setups. Like, is there one you actually feel is a bit like CS? Is the one that plays a bit like a CS map?
Yeah, as soon as I switched over to Valorant, I think Ascent like caught my eye. Because I think some people say it's exactly like Dust 2, and some people say it's kind of like Mirage.
Oh, okay.
It's like a perfect, because there's the cat, there's like the connector, obviously the bomb sites. There's like, I think, because that's like the first map I noticed was like a very defined mid control.
Right.
And that was like on every Counter-Strike map was there.
Yeah, of course.
There's like a mid control except like Nuke and Train maybe, but those were like, I think that's probably the one. That's probably the one that, you know, mimics most CS maps.
Right, when you actually came to the Champions Tournament, right, what's interesting is I noticed you actually ended up playing a bunch of the different teams. You didn't just play all the same teams from the other one. Like, you got to play like Paper Rex and fucking EDG and like these other weirdest. Like, it feels like you actually got to play almost every team by the end. Like, what did you think of this Champions run?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was all in front of the NA crowd again, and I was like, man, maybe I can win another NA tournament here. So yeah, I know my last one went pretty well with New York. So I was like, all right, let's see what we can do. And we just played, you know, out of our minds. Everyone played. Luckily, like everyone on the team was at their peak. So we were very dangerous when everyone was playing really well. And you know, I think I think we were just I think that was like the only way to describe it. Everyone was at their peak, so everyone just played crazy.
Being as you did obviously come out of the Americas region, you obviously know how good Loud were. What was it like to actually beat Loud in a best of 5?
Yeah, I think they were like, because we beat them. We played them in Americas and we lost in the playoffs. We played them in Tokyo.
And that was when they looked sick, right? And the VCT was when they were looking amazing,
because
right?
they won VCT. They came out on top on VCT. We beat them in Tokyo convincingly, and then maybe we lost them in Tokyo, or we lost like one map in Tokyo. It was a close game, and then we convincingly beat them in champs. I think. What was the score?
No, it was
Champs?
3-2. It was 3-2.
Okay, it was the opposite then. It was convincing in Tokyo, and it was very close in champs. But I remember that game. That game, the 3-2 was like, that could have easily been the finals. That could have been like the way everyone was playing on my team, the way they were all playing on Loud, the crowd and all that. Like that could have been easily like the grand final game.
By the way, one thing I want to know, because obviously this is very different from Counter-Strike. So in Counter-Strike, when you know you've got a match coming up at a tournament, like if people don't know, usually you like gather in like a hotel room, you get the coach's laptop, you pick, a VOD or something, they explain to you a few setups, like they're going to do this on cat control, or maybe just like even the veto, or we think they'll pick Mirage or whatever. Mm-hmm. What do you actually do in Valorant? Like, because for example, one thing I imagine is, like, if someone's a CS fan, one of the hardest things about the game is there aren't just demos to download. You can't just download and like sort of know 50 things. Some of it, even if the meta switches, you're just guessing, or you look at a recent online VOD they played or something. What are you actually trying to prepare for? Like, do you even have a sense of like what comps they're going to play? Do you have like a whiteboard with them? What do you do in a Valorant team?
Comps is a big thing, and it's usually pretty obvious. You just look at like the previous comps they played, and usually most of the maps are the same. But like some like a lot of the Asian teams, they bring out some random ass comps, and they'll play some like whack, just random stuff that's like hard to deal with. Paper X is known for that. But European teams seem to stick to the meta. NA teams stick to the same thing. But we didn't do much anti-stratting on EG. It was pretty surprising to me. Like when we went to our first LAN in Tokyo, really didn't do that much other than like maybe the IGL and the coach talked a little bit. But no, we didn't do much. It was different for me, because my whole career I've always been like pretty hands-on with a coach. So like they would tell me things to help with the IGO, and they would like give me direct anti-strats too, like player versus player. But I think I guess I might have just taken like a step back for Valorant and kind of just played my own game. And I think it helps. So.
One thing I want to ask you, because I feel like people don't even know this detail, dude, is Valorant actually has a weird thing, which is when it does double elim in the playoffs, it isn't just like if you watch like TI and Dota, it's the most famous double elim tournament in esports. That one, the final, just stops being double elim and it's just a match. It's like whoever wins at that point wins the game. For this one, the advantage they gave to Paper X was they got to have a 2-ban advantage for the final. You beat them 3-1. Yeah. Like, can you give some sense to a casual fan? That's fucking, you're playing uphill at that point in time, right? If they get to pick 2 of the maps to remove.
It's pretty big, because most teams in Valorant have like a permaban. It's not, I guess even in CS people have permabans too. But in CS in the grand finals, you just get a map. You just default like a map win, so you're up 1-0. So I don't know if that's more crazy.
That's pretty broken too, sure.
Yeah, but it depends on the team with the veto advantage. Like for us, it didn't really matter because we were good on all the maps, I think. But if you played FNATIC, like in Tokyo, if we had map advantage, I think we could have won.
Right.
Because they actually had a permaban, and they also had another map that they didn't play. So it's already 2 maps they don't play that you could insta just pick. And I think it was weird too. So you got the first 2 bans, but you also got like the first 2 picks too. That's the advantage coming from like the upper bracket. So it's crazy. I don't know. The first time I heard about that in Tokyo, I was like, oh my God, that is an insane advantage for whoever comes up from there. So
being as you did, the film movie ending happened, you did win the final and you did it on NA soil and all this jazz. Like, beyond just winning a tournament, like, here's the question. I know it's an unfair question, but I have to ask it. In a way, does it like feel like if you'd won a CS major, does it have some comparable sensation?
I think so. I think if I won a Masters, I would say no. I think only because it was the champs tournament. like the biggest tournament of the year, the last one of the year. I think so. I think only because the game hasn't been around that long, it doesn't have that kind of prestige yet. I think CS, with every year there was a major, they got more and more hype. I think the same will happen with Valorant. I think this was only the third champs.
Yeah.
I think with every year it'll be, that much more impressive.
If you hadn't have won a big tournament in Valorant, would it have made it harder to like justify having made the swap and stay? Would it have mattered to you in that sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think coming up on the third year now, maybe like by the end of this year, if I hadn't won anything, I would probably have regrets. But it's all about the experience too. Even if you like don't win, as long as you're having fun doing it and you're at least placing well, I would say. It would still be a disappointment if I didn't win, but if I was still placing well, I was on good teams with cool people and like having a good time, I think I would still be happy.
Right, obviously, I can't really know what you can say about EG the org, so I'll ask a very open-ended question. You tell me what you want to answer, right? So, because for a start off, I know with other people in EG, they were all super NDA'd up the arse, and like they were sort of told that you don't say anything ever about what we do, or we'll see you in court, basically. So you will answer however you want. But basically, you obviously, even though you won the World Championship of the game, and in theory your team's number one, and you were second at the event before, everything's looking great, you got into one of the most awkward situations I think I've ever seen in esports, which is almost immediately after winning the actual World Championship, there was these stories of like, they're going to have to take a pay cut, and then it was like, and maybe they're selling the whole team, and then maybe the players have to individually go elsewhere. Like, it sounded like the stories got worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, just from Ethan's perspective, like, you don't have to tell me any secret stuff about EG, but what was going on in your head in this scenario? Like, in theory, you should be top of the world, but then it sounded like you had more career uncertainty than maybe you've ever had.
Yeah, you hit it on the nail of the head. It was definitely like it was like demoralizing, knowing you just had the biggest accomplishment of your career, like especially for the other players on the team. This is like unimaginable success, right, for them. So it's like having all that, and then it was literally like a week or two after we got all that news and stuff like that. So it was like, yeah, it's pretty bad. But knowing also you are the best team in the world at that point, probably, like, it's not really uncertainty. Like, I think everyone was pretty confident they would have a team no matter what happened. So
was it even plausible that like the team could have really kept the whole lineup together? Was there ever like a buyer or someone who could have bought the whole team, do you think?
Yeah. There was a scenario.
Was that what you were hoping for? That you just transitioned to a new org and you keep the same lineup?
Some people on the team wanted that. Some people were kind of already out.
Okay.
Because they kind of wanted to just go different places.
Okay.
But some people wanted the new org, but all 5 people stay, all 6 people stay. Some people wanted differently. I won't go into specifics on it, but there was a chance.
Were you personally someone who was at peace, like, okay, we did great things, but I can move on? I mean, if I'm you, right, in that scenario, my perspective would be like, I've waited a long time to like win championships. I got one chance with EG. Now I've got, like, in that scenario, I'm like, keep the pedal to the metal. Let's keep winning. Let's just stay together, right?
Yeah. I was down for both. I was content with, fine. It was weird because like between when we got the news and like last week when I signed with NRG, there was like a 2-month span of uncertainty. So there was a lot of thinking going on, a lot of time to like change your mind. Like, oh, do I want to leave? Do I want to stay? But like, there's repercussions. There's all that. I was fine with both. I was fine moving on. I was fine staying if everyone was also equally invested in it. But that's just how it went. Ended up going the other direction. So,
give me your thoughts. What is the reason why Ethan is an in-game leader? Is there something you've thought about in the past before you did the move?
Yeah, I did it for a very, very short stint on 100 Thieves when we were in that like little development period. I did it for like a week or two. But it was just I didn't think I had like the right roster around me to really succeed in that, and I really didn't want to waste my time. I think just straight up, I didn't want to waste my time IGLing for something I didn't think that would work out. Because it would look bad on me, it would look bad on the players. I think it was like it was a whole thing. But now I think I joke around a little bit about it, but I basically beat the game. I won champs, so maybe it's time to try something new.
Right, sure.
Try IGLing a little bit. I think I've played long enough too where it's warranted. I've played with, I said this before, I played with like literally the best NA IGLs in CS history for like 4 years, 5 years. So I think I had like a good system around me too to learn. And I think I just wanted to try it. I think right now I have a good roster. I have a good roster to try it out.
Yeah, it seems like the team you have now in NRG is a very interesting mix, because if people don't know, you kept some of the NRG players from the FNS era. Marv used to be in Optic anyway back in the day, rejoined the team, and then you took Demon1 with you over from EG, basically. Like, this is a pretty powerful squad of players, because if people don't know, NRG last year might not have had like the craziest result, but they were always still right there. Like, at the lands, they would be like that far from going to a final or a semi-final. So I feel like this is, like, of all the scenarios you could end up in, you've got a pretty good destination here, right? This is a team that could win as well.
Yeah, I think this is the best team. Like if I had to have left EG, I think this was the best team I could have landed on. I think there's literally 5 champs on the team, so you have a pretty good chance of doing well. I think if everyone finds the right stride. Last season we did that well because the chemistry on the team was that good. There was just like a perfect system. Everyone worked well together. So if we can do that, if everyone is still, willing to learn, even though you've been, at the top of this game for that long, if everyone's willing to learn and put in the time, we'll keep doing it. We'll keep winning.
Are there big shoes to fill for FNS though? Because I've heard actually from some of the players in Valorant, like, dude, a lot of these players think he's like really good. They say he's like a mega mid-round in and make like reads in the game. Is it tough to replace someone like that? Obviously those players have been his teammates a long time, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think FNS. I'm still really close with him. I haven't been on a team with him since CLG, but between CLG and now, I've always been friends with him and talked to him. So I think that's just kind of how like our friend group is, how like close knit it is. But no, I'm sure he was probably like the best NAIGL in Valorant.
Sure.
So it'll be big shoes to fill, but I'm sure 100% we're gonna have different styles. That's just how it is. So,
and then if someone's not from CS, actually a piece of info that will be encouraging, I hope, is that obviously the coach of this team is Chet, formerly I'm a Pet, who was your coach in like fucking whatever, like EG, CLG, a whole bunch of squads, right?
Yeah, CLG, NRG, EG.
So I imagine it's a comfortable sort of transition working with him, yeah.
Yeah, me and him already work well together, and plus same thing for him too. We're part of the. We've been friends and talked to each other this whole time since CLG. So, it's nothing new. It's definitely. I think it'll be a walk in the park. Me and him working together. It's not going to be any issue.
By the way, just as an aside, because it's a detail from your career, right? I remember when way back in the day, I used to go to the events with the old Cloud9 of like Hiko and Shroud and Sean Gares, right? Yeah. I did find it, even though I was just a guy who knew him, I wasn't even like friends with him or anything. I found it quite surreal a few years later when Shroud became like the biggest streamer in the whole world and was making like God knows how much money, and like the Joker's like all celebrities knew. Is it kind of similar with Tarik, where he used to just be your teammate and a good player, and then there was a period where like the Joker's in Valorant, like sometimes he's carrying like half the viewership on his fucking stream. It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah, Tarik's always been that way. I think he finally fully committed to it though, and he really finally came to fruition. I think he finally found success with it. But he's always been that kind of guy. He's like very hardworking. His work ethic's insane. So I think no matter like what he ended up wanting to do, he would find success in it. And he has the right characteristics for it too, being a content creator and being a good one. So I'm glad he's doing well. That's good.
By the way, being as you started your career when you were just a 16-year-old coming as a rookie into CLG, now you're 23, you're like the in-game leader. Do you actually feel like, look, it's a loaded question again, but that's half of what interviews are. It's more like your answer to it is the interesting part. Like, does this imply like you haven't just played games? It sounds like you've like matured through the game in a way. Like I'm thinking about the responsibility you have is totally different. You were just a guy fragging before, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like literally my life. So it's whatever I end up kind of choosing to do, whether I chose to IGL or I kind of chose to be that right-hand guy my whole career, I'll put my best towards it. So I think I've shown like whatever I kind of put myself to, I'll be the best at. So I think I'll be fine. Hopefully.
Do you actually think this is just again? It's mad loaded, but it's just a fun question, isn't it? Do you actually think Demon1 is the best Valorant player?
I think mechanically, yeah. I think he's the best mechanically. I think that's why also Valorant's really cool. You know, he can be the best Jet player in the world, and there's always going to be the best something else.
Oh, the other agents, right? Sure, yeah.
You know,
sure.
So it's like he can be the best in that role, but I can also have 4 people on my team that are the best in their roles, and so I think that's why it's really cool. I think it's Simple's the best on that team, and maybe he always will be whatever team he plays on. And the other 2 or 3 or 4 will be right under him, but I don't think that is how it works in this game. I think everyone can be on the same level, but be like considered the best in whatever they do.
Oh, do you not like? There's no player who sort of can dwarf the game like Ziwu or Simple or these players.
No, right. I don't think so.
Is it just you think the nature of the game itself or the roles or something?
I think so. I think there's just like, I think it's also just more like team based than Counter-Strike in a sense, where like there's a lot of instances in this game where you have the best player on your team and they don't play well on a different team. So it's I think it kind of depends on how you set them up. It depends on the system they're in. And I think like the better it gets, the more they shine, for sure.
This is just a weird question, but I have to ask it. Since you are someone who has such like an established position formally in Counter-Strike, over the years, have you tried to lure people over? Like if you saw like an old teammate, someone was doing, you never tried to be like, come on over, it's great. Like, Valorant's awesome, you can come join.
Maybe at the start. Maybe I think I might have asked Breeze.
Right.
Breeze at the start,
I think it was rumored he might go at one point, right?
Oh wait, yeah, we did. What team was I on? We tried to get him for one of the teams I was on. He was supposed to join
maybe NRG last year or something.
He was supposed to join NRG the first time with me.
Yeah, there you go. The one after the 100 Thieves, yeah.
Yeah, he was gonna come with me, and then I don't know what happened with that, but he ended up just staying in CS. But other than that, no, I don't think I've never really asked anybody other than him.
Right, this is the one. Luckily, we're in the Valorant section here. It's almost at the end. But I do have a question. It's another loaded one, but it's one I'm interested to know, which is, as I said, I actually think, even though Counter-Strike has survived Valorant, and it's a very different game with a very different audience, the big problem, I actually do think NA player base is the one area where Valorant has sort of cannibalized Counter-Strike. Like, essentially, if I think of it, would a brand new player now be playing Counter-Strike or Valorant? It's obvious to me if they're from North America, it'll be Valorant. That's just the game everyone's playing, right? Yeah. Do you actually have any concerns in that sense for even though you're not in the game, do you think like NA in CS2, for example, will it struggle in this regard? I mean, it feels like the next Ethan won't be in that game; they'll be in Valorant, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you explained it well. I think that's just how it's gonna be. I think most new players are just gravitated towards Valorant. It's just the newer. It's literally meant they made it for younger players to like want to play. And over the years, I think that's just how it's gonna be. More new players will join Valorant, less new players will join CS. But I hope for success in both games. Like I said, I mean, I think of Counter-Strike every year, so that's nothing against that game. I think that's just logically that's how it is.
You said it yourself earlier, but jokingly, right? You have, in terms of the resume, you've now completed the game. You've got the World Championship already. You've got the major. But obviously, there have to be new goals, new expectations. Are you a guy where it's easy to keep motivated? Like, it's not just like once you hit the target, you know, some people are like that. Some people win a tournament, they can just take 3 months off almost. Like, you keep going, you keep driven?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the first time in this game I've won, and I learned from my mistakes in CS. We won that tournament. And fell off a little bit because of complacency. So, you'd think it would be like an obvious mistake to avoid, but until you experience it, it's like you don't really know. So now it's like, it's always going to be pedal to the floor, and we're going to work hard. Luckily, too, I have a really good team with me, so I think it'll be not easy, but I think it'll be really enjoyable. It'll be an enjoyable time.
One thing we're not really used to in the Counter-Strike scene is, despite all the complaining, is things actually being OP. Like, even if things are really strong, usually, because of the way Counter-Strike works, it doesn't have the same, like, literal hard rolls as a game like Valorant. Like, if the Krieg's really strong, like it was when you were on EG and CSGO, well, everyone can use it. The joke is even the CD can pick it up and it's really good for him too. Like, so and to me, it's like OP doesn't really break the game. It's more like that thing's really strong. One of the things that it's hard to argue against is Valorant is like the MOBA games where when, like, an agent's really broken, like when Chamber was super sick or back in the day with they really are like, they just dominate the whole game and the best players are all on this agent. How do you handle that aspect, especially now you're going to be an in-game leader? Because I feel like if you're from Counter-Strike, as much as I agree, it can get stale. The good news is it's like American football. It's just the same game, you know, like it doesn't change that much. So there's an upside to that too. It sounds like it could be a bit stressful in a game where things are OP and you're waiting for sort of the game dev to either you have to find a solution in the game or you need them to nerf it. Like, that's a different world from CS. How have you handled that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. You know, when you're the person abusing the agent, right? Let's say like some really good chamber players, your career for that short stint of time is at mercy of Riot.
For sure.
So those players, you know, that were like known for their chamber, as soon as it got nerfed, you know, some people just fell off completely. Luckily, I think a lot of people now are very flexible, and I think they know that now that, you know, you can't really just play one thing no matter how OP it is. You can still play it, but you got to have other options too. But as an IGL, you know, playing against that, sometimes it's difficult because these updates come out of nowhere. Maybe even like between
sometimes right before like a LAN, right? So I've seen like some of the VCTs just up right before the LAN,
Yeah, so at that point, it's, you know, whoever's really good at adapting will probably come out on top. But yeah, I think it just kind of keeps you on your toes. It's completely different from CS, like you said. You kind of always have to be innovating, which is really cool. It keeps your mind working, keeps you motivated. So it's nice.
Another high point I wanted to hit at the end of the interview in Valorant is I feel like a really cool thing is because it's a Riot game, it actually is a bit more like League of Legends where the whole world really does play this game. If people don't know, like the EDG team you played from China, some of those players look fucking sick. The DRX team was always like, you know, giving people blue balls, all those have actually got it together. Like, as far as I know, basically, unlike Counter-Strike, like this is like all the major regions. I mean, you played fucking Paper X and the Fallen Champions. Like, it's a different game from CS in that regard. Like, you know what it's like the joke is when I made fun of the IM Shanghai tournament before, no one gives a shit about Tai Lu and fucking CS. That's an also run, aren't they? Was like, these teams are some of the best in the world.
Yeah, it was. I made that joke too. You know, in CS, I don't think we ever lost to an Asian team.
Right.
And then in Valorant, it's like these guys are making grand finals. They're like tough opponents, all that. So it's come a long way. Maybe they just get better, or maybe it's Valorant's just better suited for them, or I don't know what it is, but it's really cool. It's really cool that, you know, all regions are thriving. Maybe except Europe. I don't know. Europe only has a couple good teams, but, you know, Asia has. I feel like Asia is like the scary team when you play, like in CS, you play like an open qualifier.
Oh,
and there's
right.
like that one team with like a bunch of aimers and they're random. They're scary. Asian teams are scary like that.
Right.
So especially with the comps, they just bring out the most random stuff too. So you never really know what to expect.
At the end of the interview, do you have a final message? Is someone you'll thank or say hello to?
Yeah, just thank all my fans for people that stayed, you know, from CS. I know probably most people that watch you are still from Counter-Strike.
Sure.
You know, that's still like my home, I would say, no matter how long I stay in Valorant. I think CS is my home. And, you know, I hope come a lot of people, a lot of your fans too, come and, you know, you can be fans of both games. You know, it's not black and white. I think you can enjoy both, and I think people have started to see that now. So, but yeah, thank you.
I've had to make a lot of tough choices in my career, but thanks to the support of my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, I never have to make tough financial decisions. So this video and all the rest on my channel are kindly supported by Ahmed Haju, Frisky, Mac Pugnaccio Racula, Animosity, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it if you've ever heard before, and you'll hear it many times in the future. A special thanks goes out to my main man, Journey Keys Minion. Do you you want to ask a question in my video AMA? Do you want to be part of one of those long discussions where we talk about whatever you like in esports? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are going to be? Or maybe you want to suggest a topic for a future Thorin's Thoughts type video? Well, if any of these perks or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is today and join the Skrill Illuminati by joining the Patreon link in the description box below.